This afternoon, Rishi Sunak gave his speech to the Conservative Party conference. It was a little over an hour long, so I'm going to try and squeeze down the overarching themes and the big announcements he made in that speech to about 15 minutes. I'll also give you some of my opinions on the matter. I want to point out they're mine and not the company's opinions. And I'll talk about how this is going to impact the upcoming general election. Hi everyone, I'm Richard Winstone with Over 50s Money. I know generally I tend to do videos on energy, anything that's going on in the energy industry, and that's the only time I tend to comment on anything political or related to the government. But we're coming up to a general election. I think it's quite important to everybody, and I thought it might be useful to do, at the very least, some summary videos. I'll be including my own personal opinions. As always, if you disagree with them or you want to have a conversation about my opinions and your opinions, I'm always happy to do that. My email address is in the description below. As long as it's a constructive conversation, I'm happy to have it. I do understand that this is a company channel that you're following right now, and if you'd rather I didn't include my personal opinions in future videos, please let me know. Talking about politics is kind of new for both me and the company. We don't have a political affiliation either way. I don't have a political affiliation either way. I've not decided which way I'm going to vote. And as I said in yesterday's video, it's probably going to be based on energy policies. And I'm not trying to sway your votes either way either. It's just my personal opinions I'm giving on whatever speech I've heard on a specific day. Today, it happens to be our Prime Minister's speech at the Conservative Party conference that we're going to discuss. So let's get started with the start of the speech. I found it very American. Didn't really enjoy that part personally. So his wife came on stage and spoke about their two children, about Rishi's upbringing, his parents, and about how she met him and who he was when they met, things like that. She effectively tried to humanize him. And then throughout his speech, he attacked Keir Starmer and the Labour Party quite regularly, in some ways in a jokey way, sometimes a bit more serious. But the whole thing felt very American. And it's one of the things I don't like about politics. Like, I would much rather, and I don't know if I'm just being idealistic here, but I would much rather the Conservatives and Labour got on and understood that each has good ideas for certain groups of people within the country, and they should work together to try and do what's best for everybody in the country. Instead, they're more interested in attacking each other and basically saying that the other is the worst person in the world and the worst party in the world, and there's no way anyone should ever vote for them because they're just terrible, which isn't true. It makes me disbelieve politicians. There's no way that they believe that to be actually true. But yeah, that's all political ranting and not really relevant. It did just feel a little bit cringy at times because of how American it came across in the attacking of other parties and the wife coming on to humanize the prime minister and things like that. The overarching theme of the Conservative Party this time around is about long-term decisions. Now, this again is somewhere I would rather Labour and Conservatives got on board with each other and worked together. So effectively, it's looking like the Tory party are going to focus entirely on the future, on the long-term plans for the country. And a lot of what Rishi was talking about was creating this euphoric vision of Great Britain, of England, the United Kingdom, for our children and our grandchildren. And he's implying, or at some points directly saying, that Labour are focusing very much on short-term decisions to help the now and have no plan for the future, and it's all going to be terrible in the future for our kids. And the problem with both of those issues is that we do need a long-term plan, but we are suffering right now. So we need a short-term plan as well. I don't want a government that's only going to focus on the short term, get 3 years down the line and go, we're done, did what we said we're going to do and got nothing planned for the future. I also don't want a government that's looking at 50 years in the future and not doing anything for me today. Okay, we're in a financial crisis, we're in an energy crisis, inflation is still really high, interest rates are ridiculous, housing market is dropping. We need some fixes today, and having Rishi just continuously talk about the future is a difficult thing to hear. And I think it's going to divide a lot of the country as well, because we're in a generation now where a lot of people aren't having children until their mid to late 30s. A lot of people aren't having children at all. So when you're talking about the next generation and families, you're doing it for your kids and your grandkids. A lot of people can't relate to that. They don't have kids. Um, I mean, I don't have children, but I do believe we should be building a better country for their future, for the future of the children and grandchildren that do exist and will exist in the future. Um, but it's harder for me to relate, and I do understand that right now I'm struggling, my parents are struggling, my family's struggling with these financial crises, and they need to be addressed. And where Rishi hasn't really spoken about short-term fixes for our current problems in any way, it concerns me. But yeah, it does look like it's going to be a battle between Labour and Conservatives over what's better for the country, whether we focus long term or short term. Okay, so that's the overarching theme. I do also want to talk about some of the divisive language that Rishi used, which kind of shocked me a little bit. Um, and some of it was contradictory, at least I didn't quite follow it entirely. So he spoke a lot about the immigration problems and how there's too much immigration, and they're going to have, once the planes start sending immigrants off abroad, then we'll stop having those boats come across the channel, and that we need to take a lot harsher stance on it. And Britain is for the British. Um, all felt very old school in his mindset, if you will. But then he also went on to talk about how this Conservative Party has created a United Kingdom that presents opportunities and hope to immigrants and the descendants of immigrants. And you can just look at the Conservative Party and look at the Energy Secretary and the Home Secretary and the Prime Minister, and you can reach the top as an immigrant. And that's the inclusionism and environment that the Conservatives have created, which just felt contradictory to me to the previous statements. He also said the sentence, "men are men and women are women," which I didn't expect to hear our Prime Minister say, but it is a very clear view of him and his party that they believe that transgenderism is wrong, that there's no gender fluidity, and that if you are born a man, you are a man, and you can't say you're a woman, and if you're born a woman, you are a woman, and you can't say you're a man. It's a very firm stance to take. I think he's going to lose a lot of voters, especially amongst the younger generation, but that's not really the Conservatives' core demographic anyway. I think it was a very firm stance to take by a Prime Minister. Um, it's a tough and sensitive topic to discuss, and it's not always easy to have a clear mind on it. So I'm impressed, if I'm being honest, that he has a clear mind on it and that he's put forward a clear view as to his mind and his party's mind. I don't necessarily agree with it. I do think people have the right to identify as any gender that they choose. And more often than not, from what I understand, it's not a choice. However, if I'm being perfectly honest, do I think it's okay for a person that was born as a biological man that now understands that they are a woman to be allowed entrance to a woman's changing room at somewhere like a swimming pool where there might be young girls with their mothers? I don't think that's okay. No, I wouldn't accept that. So this is what I mean. It's a very tough and sensitive topic. And whether you agree or not with the Prime Minister, I am impressed that they've put forward a firm view on that. But as I said, it's going to be divisive, and I think it's going to cause a lot of uproar for the Prime Minister amongst several groups across the UK. So that's everything on sort of the language and the overarching theme. So let's talk about what he actually announced. And the main one that was being spoken about before his speech was obviously HS2. Rishi Sunak has confirmed that HS2 phase 2 will be cancelled. They're not going to do it anymore. And that will be much to the dismay of people in Manchester and many others, to be honest. They've spent billions on it. It's a big waste of money. But the Prime Minister did address that concern in his speech, where he said, effectively, he said throwing good money after bad isn't a good reason to keep going with it. A lot of money has been wasted, but they're not going to waste any more. He believes they'll save about £30 billion by cancelling that phase of HS2. He's said to Manchester that they will still cut the travel time from Manchester to London by about half an hour by improving rail connections from Manchester to Birmingham, which is how far HS2 has gone and will end, and by investing in improving the roads around there. So they're going to put a lot of money into various A roads that you mentioned and into the M6. They're also going to invest in improved train links between Manchester and Liverpool, and sort of between the rest of the North and the Midlands. So there will be more money spent up there. It will create more jobs, which is always a good thing. But obviously, it's another thing that the Conservatives promised to do, failed miserably on, spent twice as much as they were meant to have spent, and they've not finished it. So some of the other things that Rishi announced today that I do agree with includes a plan to increase the legal age at which people can buy cigarettes by 1 year for every year going forwards. And effectively what that means is that anyone that is 14 years old today or younger will never legally be allowed to buy cigarettes in the UK. That will help ease pressure on the NHS because so many health issues are related to smoking. Roughly a quarter of all cancer-related deaths are caused by smoking, so it should reduce the number of cancer-related deaths in the future. And this is what I mean when I said the overarching theme is the future. This isn't really going to benefit the NHS in the next 5 to 10 years, not much, but you should start to see that in 15, 20, 30 years, there are less people struggling with smoking. And 50 years down the line, it should hopefully be a forgotten practice. I don't agree generally with limiting people's freedoms. Restrictions are never a good thing, but I do understand the health and financial benefits for the country in doing this. So, yeah, I do kind of agree with it. He also said that they're going to start taking firmer regulatory stances on vaping, which I think is very important because there's next to no regulation on it at the moment. They're going to be looking at the flavorings, the colors of the vapes, the packaging, like the appealing packaging, and where they're displayed in shops. And as well as all of that, they're going to look at the use of disposable vapes, which is causing sort of a littering problem across the UK at the moment. So, yeah, I agree with all of that. I do think these things need to be regulated strongly. I mean, I'm a vapor, and I agree there should be a lot firmer regulation on it. I don't think there should be as bright coloured as they are. I think there should be some limitation on the flavours because there's such a wide variety that it appeals to pretty much everybody. And I definitely don't believe that they should be upfront, displayed above the chocolate bars in shops, appealing to the younger generations because that's what it does at the moment. So firmer regulation on that is very important. And I agree that that is something that should be done. The other big thing that Rishi spoke about was education. Again, this is looking towards the future of the country. So this will be beneficial in 10, 15, 20 years' time when sort of the effects of these decisions could be felt or start to be felt. So to start with, there is an attack on what he's calling rip-off degrees. So Rishi doesn't believe that as many people should be going to university as they are, and that a lot of degrees are rip-offs. They effectively get people into tens of thousands of pounds of debt, and they add no benefit to that person's life. I'm not fully in agreement with this. So from what I understand, the way he'll classify what a rip-off degree is based on the level of dropout, which doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad degree. It could just be a really difficult degree, and a lot of people started thinking that they'll succeed. They don't. And, I think that needs to be carefully balanced. And the other one, which is probably a better measure, is the progression into jobs after graduation. The level of progression into jobs after graduation. So he'll use those metrics to determine whether a degree is a bad one, and then he'll ask for there to be caps on those degrees for each university, so a maximum number of students they can take, limiting the intake, and therefore less people will be going to university. I don't agree with anything that limits education, and I think Rishi may be missing the point of university slightly. In my opinion, university isn't solely about the subjects you study. I have a master's degree in mathematics. If you asked me what I learned at university, I couldn't tell you. It was over a decade ago, and I've not used any of it since. I can barely remember the title of my dissertation, let alone any of the actual mathematics involved. That being said, my degree was not a waste of money. My degree didn't just teach me those things, which would have been fantastic if I continued down a mathematical route. Yes, I would have used them. But my degree also taught me how to socialize a lot better, how to come out of my shell. I was very shy beforehand. I ended up going to America for a year to study abroad by myself. That gave me self confidence. When I returned, I worked for the International Relations Department of my university and gave speeches to prospective students and their parents. I spoke to rooms of people from 30 up to 150 people, which gave me public speaking experiences. I learned how my brain learned best, how I operate when I'm not forced into a schedule by school. So when I'm managing my own time, how do I do research best? How do I work with groups and individually by myself best? University helps you develop a whole range of core skills and techniques about yourself. You need those going forwards, and I think it is a very important life step for so many people. And that's just at actual university. You've got to also consider the fact that people learn how to live by themselves outside of their parents' homes. Most people leave their homes for the first time when they go to university, and that is an excellent stepping stone between real life and being looked after by your parents, because there's a big gap between the two. At university, especially first year, you get support by the university on managing your bills, what's expected of you, and getting your accommodation together and looking after yourself, where you learn to cook. You've got all your new university classmates around you teaching you things you didn't know and you teaching them things they didn't know. It just gives you a better, well-rounded experience. I think there's infinite benefits of going to university outside of just the core topic that you study. And I think Rishi may be missing the point on that, so I'm not sure I agree with that policy. However, what he's looking to do with secondary schools, I do agree with. So he's looking to increase the amount of time students spend talking to their teachers, like face to face in class with their teachers, by about 190 hours a year, which is good. More face time with your teachers should mean a better education. He's also looking to combine the A levels and T levels into something he's called in the new British standard, which I'm not entirely sure what that means. But he's looking to move A level students from studying an average of 3 A levels to an average of 5. So at the moment, and at least as far back as when I was at school, on average in the UK, we do only study 3 A levels. That's what you need to get into university. So it's what you do. Rishi thinks we need a more rounded educational system and more rounded young people as they go into university and the working environment. And so having 5 A levels rather than 3 gives a better education, which I completely agree with, and it gets us closer to our economic competitors, where in a lot of other countries, their A level students or the equivalent thereof are studying 7 subjects before university. Us down at 3 is a relatively low number, and I do think improving our secondary school education system is a good step. So, yeah, I agree with that. The other thing I wanted to discuss that Rishi mentioned today was talking about crime in the UK. He very explicitly mentioned there should be no such thing as a minor crime, and I agree with that. Every crime should be investigated and seen through to prosecution. And he doesn't agree with how we currently view life sentences, and I also agree with him on this. So he will be looking to move life sentences to actually mean life for those that commit death-related crimes or sex-related crimes. So rather than, at the moment in the UK, life tends to mean around 15 years. He wants them to actually mean life imprisonment. A, as a deterrent to those that might commit those crimes. B, as an appropriate punishment for those that have committed those crimes. And I am in full agreement with that decision. On the minor crime point, he's spoken about how they've got more police officers in place and how they intend to put more police officers in place in the future to make sure that there's ample policing of our streets and that no one should feel unsafe walking home alone at night. Again, I do think some of this wording is portraying a euphoric UK that just is unlikely to exist, but he's just painting a picture and he's using metaphor to get there, so that's fine. So yeah, I think those were the main points that I wanted to discuss from his speech today. in my personal opinion, I'm not very trustworthy of politicians. I never wanted Rishi in power. I didn't like him as Chancellor of the Exchequer. I don't particularly like him as Prime Minister, but to be honest, since he's come in, I haven't really seen much of him in the last year. He's not been very publicly active. I think it's unlikely that all of these promises they're making, they will actually see to fruition. And part of the problem is that when you're promising something that's going to come into play or benefit the UK in 15, 20, 30, 40 years, you're never held accountable to that because he's not going to be around for that by then. We would have had 10 other prime ministers by then who would have made other promises and we voted them in and they're just going to sweep away Rishi's promises. So I can't really see the point. What I'd rather he did was tell us what he's going to do in the next 4 years and how that will help us in the future. And telling us that a short-term plan by Labour doesn't help our future, I actually disagree with, because it will give us, we'll be in a better position to start building for our future. So we're starting at a negative right now. You want to get to this euphoric future, but we're starting way back here at a negative. We need to know how you're going to get us out of the negative into the positive so we can move towards that future that he wants us to have. And I don't think he's doing enough of that. Personally, as I said at the start of this video, I haven't made up my mind either way which political party I'm going towards. I have no political affiliation. And my decision will most likely be made up on energy policies. I will also post videos about any speeches that come out from Keir Starmer about the Labour sort of direction that they're going for the general election next year. I just haven't seen anything. That Labour seems to be very quiet at the moment. But until those come out, I'll probably keep just posting about energy going forwards. I've got another video coming out shortly about Ofgem's consultation on the wholesale energy cost allowance, or their delaying of a consultation on a letter they've published on their website about it. So that should be out shortly. I'll post that to the petition signatories tomorrow. But for now, I think that's everything I wanted to say on the Rishi Sunak speech today. I think I've covered most of the core points, and anything else you'll probably find online or have seen on the BBC or on Twitter or Facebook already. If you have any comments about this style of video, please let me know. If you'd rather we didn't do politics in the future, I'm happy to take on board feedback. And obviously, if you'd rather I just kept the political videos to statements of what was said rather than my own personal opinions, again, I'm happy to take that on board. Please just let me know in the comments below or email me directly. If you have similar or different views to me on anything and you just fancy a chat about it, please do feel free to email me. I'm always open to hearing about what other people think and why, and trying to expand my understanding of what people want in the country. I think that's always a good thing, and it's also useful to put forward my own thoughts and see if we can enlighten each other. That's how this sort of stuff should work. We should have open and honest communication and just have an honest conversation with each other that's constructive. Thank you everyone for watching. If you enjoyed this video and want to see some more of them, or if you want to see some more energy videos, please do subscribe to the Over 50s Money YouTube channel. Click the little bell to turn on notifications. You'll be notified as soon as we post new videos. And please share this video around with your friends and family. The more people that we can show our information to, the more people we can help. Thank you.